All right. Well, in that case, let's call this meeting to order. Apologies, folks, that we're a little late. We finished up with our study session just a little behind there and needed a couple minutes to get everything finalized. So let me welcome you all to the Development Review Commission for the City of Tempe for June 22nd, 2021. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that's therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Now, any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have with us from City staff, Ms. Aparna Dasgupta, Mr. Steve Abrahamson, Ms. Diana Kaminsky, and Ms. Joanna Berry, and we're also joined by Mr. Greg Wolf. By way of commissioners tonight, we have Commissioner Andrew Johnson, Commissioner Barbara Lloyd, we have Commissioner Don Casano, Vice Chair Mike DiDomenico, Commissioner Philip Amorosi, and Commissioner Stephen Bauer, and I am Chairman David Lyon. We have somewhat of a short agenda tonight, folks, but we hope that you will enjoy it. First item on our agenda is consideration of meeting minutes. Those are the meeting minutes for, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, May 25th, is it?
That's correct, Chairman. May 25th, study session and regular.
That's right, okay. All right, so we have reviewed those meeting minutes and have not found any edits to be made to them. Can I hear a motion regarding the approval of those minutes, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Casano. I make a motion for approval of the study session May 25th and the regular meeting of May 25th for the Development Review Commission be approved.
All right. Do I hear a second, please?
Second. Vice Chair.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Casano and seconded by Vice Chair DiDomenico. Commissioner Bauer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano?
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Aye.
I abstain because I was not present at that meeting. Commissioner Lloyd? How do you vote?
I also abstain as I was not present.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Aye. Excuse me, aye.
All right, thank you. So motion passes 5-0 with Chairman Lyon and Commissioner Lloyd abstaining. Having taken care of that, we move on to our consent agenda, ladies and gentlemen, and we have one item on that consent agenda, which is Cardgraph Inc. We have reviewed that case and have not found any objection to it and propose to approve the project without further discussion. I believe, Ms. Dasgupta, we do not have any comment on that case. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairman.
Okay. So therefore, we will move ahead with consent agenda as written. Can I hear a motion regarding that agenda, please?
Chair Lyon, I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Okay. Do I hear a second, please?
Second.
Is that Commissioner Lloyd, I hear?
Yes.
Okay, motion to approve from Commissioner Johnson and seconded by Commissioner Lloyd. Commissioner Bauer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano?
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Lloyd?
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Commission. So now that brings us to the main event for the night. We have Carvana, and I believe our applicant team is Ms. Wendy Riddell and perhaps Mr. Lanny Shaw. Are either of those folks with us online?
Mr. Chair, I'm present, Wendy Riddell, and I think you're stuck with me alone.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for joining us. Are you ready to present your case?
I am. I'm hoping staff will be kind enough to share our presentation. Wonderful, thank you. So this is Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell, 6750 East Camelback. My pleasure to be here today on behalf of Verde Investments and about their project, their new corporate headquarters here in Tempe for Carvana. Go to the next slide, please. So as many of you, oh, back one. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. As I suspect many of you already know, Carvana is a locally owned, already headquartered in Tempe company. They are nationally recognized. They are a publicly traded company with a market cap of $50 billion. That is not a typo, that is a B, that is not an M. They really are an industry leader in car sales, certainly in a post-COVID world. They have a tremendous impact. Next slide. So the site we're here talking about today is at the southeast corner of Priest and Rio Salado. It's approximately 15 acres in size. It is, I think it's fair to say it's been underutilized and sat vacant for quite a while. And it's been a pretty complicated site to develop. Luckily, Verde has been able to put the parts and pieces together. Next slide. So to put this in context, and again, I'm sure this commission is keenly aware of what surrounds it, but it's always helpful when you see it laid out on an aerial. Obviously, to the north, you've got the existing Priest Yard that I think presents a pretty amazing future redevelopment opportunity for the city of Tempe. You've got the Liberty Center, you've got the IDEA campus, and then the Riverside Office Complex to the east, Tempe Center for the Arts, and then recently done transaction between the city of Tempe and a future development you'll see coming to the commission soon for Hardy Rio. Next slide. So we are here today seeking a planned area development overlay from the existing GID PAD. And we are seeking development standards to accommodate this new corporate campus, this office development related to height, setbacks, lot coverage, landscape, parking. We're also seeking major development plan review, that the design review is actually approved for the office development. So our proposal today is consistent with the existing general plan, with the intent of the existing commercial land use designation. It also conforms to many elements of the character plans. I'm just going to highlight a few of the Area 3 Downtown Tempe Rio Salado ASU Northwest Neighborhoods Character Area Planning Area. It's got a pretty amazing open space concept with integrated site furnishings, mini plaza, increased shade, significantly landscaped area at 43%. It's got a network of pedestrian connections, increased sidewalk plantings, bicycle parking, and LED pedestrian scale lighting. Next. Our proposal here today, again, for headquarters for Carvana, this is intended to be for their C-suite folks. This is going to be 2 new 300,000 square foot Class A office buildings. You'll see 2 new parking structures. They will be including charging stations in those structures. There's centralized amenity space. I do want to be clear that there is no vehicle storage, there's no retail sales, and there's no call centers that are occurring here on site. And actually, if you could back up one quick second. I do also want to point out one of the constraints that we've had that I think we've been able to successfully incorporate here is we are using that existing building you see, where you see existing building 1. So in the end, there really will be 3 office complexes here along with the 2 garages around a centralized courtyard amenity area. Next slide. So again, the 2 3-story office buildings, you see it blown up a bit here. that existing office complex, the 2 parking structures intended to be, conveniently located and serviced for those office buildings. You've got central amenity space. We do plan to take advantage of some public art, most likely in that central amenity space, and then pedestrian connections through this corporate campus. Next. One of the things we've also been able to work out that I think provides a real opportunity for the area as part of this development is moving the access point from First Street that exists today further to the east, which will allow it to be a signalized intersection, creates a much safer turning movement along Rio Salado. It also provides the opportunity for there to be a curb cut eventually for development across the street to have that signalized access to that intersection. Ultimately, where First Street exists today, it simply is too close to that intersection to be a very safe turning movement. And I think big picture, this solves that situation. Next. So as I mentioned, the amenities here are pretty spectacular, and they're what you would expect on a super cool corporate campus. And you see a life-size chessboard, you see a basketball court, you see a pickleball court, you see landscape and hardscape treatments, and again, that public art. This is very active open space intended to be that central amenity for this overall corporate campus. Next. And then just to give you an idea of what this will look like, you can see from Priest, we really do view this as a gateway here into Tempe, that it sets the tone with that nice feature there at the corner that draws your eye. Next. And then internal, you see again this corporate campus, you see that amenity space, you see the views from the buildings, you see the glass, really creating a very centralized, I think very usable amenity area. And then one of the other questions that came up as I was talking to folks today had to do with the garage screening and what would that look like. So I pulled some snippets from a video that we have, frankly, because I was afraid the video would crash the system, and I'm out here on my own here trying technology. So I'm sure you can recognize there's no landscaping in these at all. It really is just intended to show you the architecture. I think it will be even greater enhancement, obviously, when you see the landscaping plugged in. But I think what's particularly interesting and cool, when you look at this screening, these kind of metal fins, as you drive, they give that sense of movement. They seem to kind of glide along, and that's part of the idea here behind the architecture. Next. So in general, we are in agreement with the whole staff report. We appreciate the opportunity to work through this, but we do have a question, and we would like to remove the PAD condition of approval number 4. It does say that the maximum allowed parking for this is 1,411 spaces. I would point out that there is no maximum allowed parking, that maximum applies only to surface parking lots. And here Carvana is actually providing 2 parking garages, as we have mentioned. Certainly this is not a spec building. This is for Carvana. They know how many spaces they need. They've been very clear about it. This is a large and active campus with increasing need for employee parking, and they're looking to hire over 1,000 new employees. In fact, the parking ratio that we're seeking is the same as the IDEA campus immediately across the street. So we would ask that that condition be eliminated. I did want to share that Carvana does actively use a program called Share the Ride, where they provide incentives for employees who use Share the Ride. It's a ride matching system for commuters to quickly secure commuting options. And lastly, we did have a virtual neighborhood meeting on this site on April 20th. We had 1 resident in attendance, the HOA president for the Rio Salado Villas, and he expressed support for the case. It was a very good conversation. We really appreciate the support. And in fact, I believe that the card that you have on this case, unsolicited, is also in support. So with that, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I should mention my congratulations and gratitude, Mr. Chair, and to Commissioner Johnson. I appreciate all the amount of hours that you put into this job as volunteers. I probably more than anyone can appreciate how difficult that must be and time consuming. So I didn't want it to go unrecognized. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
No, thanks, Ms. Riddell. A little flattery is not going to hurt you, but thank you. I'll just take a moment to say it's been a pleasure to see you at a number of cases over the years. All right, so, Commission, what questions or comments do you have for our applicant? I see Mr. Casano, I see your hand there. Do you have a question or comment? Or Commissioner Amorosi?
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. Ms. Riddell, the buildings themselves look really nice. I'm hoping in the common area we're going to see more trees and shade. It looked pretty barren out there. But my main issue is the parking. The number one thing we hear about from neighbors in downtown Tempe is the traffic congestion. And I feel that the amount of parking that the city wants to allow is quite generous. And I don't see why you're asking for even over the maximum amount that they want, because all that's going to do is add to the congestion on Rio Salado and when there's events and there's other things going on. And I am quite concerned. You say that it's not for auto storage, but your tower is just down the street at Rural and Curry Road. So that's given me great concern about why you're so insistent on having so much parking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Amorosi, first of all, I appreciate the compliment on the building, so I will take that. Secondly, I will tell you, we will stipulate that this will not be auto storage. There is no intent to have auto storage here. But the fact remains, the name of the company is Carvana. I mean, this is a company where people have cars. That's just a fact. That's part of their business model here. They have a very good understanding of the amount of parking they need for their employees. And as a result, that's the amount we're seeking. I will also tell you, in terms of traffic congestion, I certainly understand where you're coming from. But one of the ways to help eliminate that is to bring top quality employers like this into Tempe, so people are not having to travel so far to achieve these type of jobs. So I certainly respect the concern. We just come about it a little bit differently.
Thank you. I think if they're going to be living closely, then you don't need the parking. That's all. Bye.
All right. You know, I was just asked to follow up if I could, Ms. Riddell. Am I getting my math straight that you have two buildings, each of which is 300,000 square feet?
Chairman Lyons, that's correct. In addition, we have the existing building that is there too. So really in total, 3 buildings. And they're a little bit over 300,000 square feet, but close enough.
Okay, sorry. So the 2 buildings add up to 600,000, and then what is the 3rd building? Do you happen to have that number?
If you give me just a moment, I'm happy to find it for you. Staff may be able to help me out in the short term. And I'm sorry, for clarification, the total is 300,000 square feet.
Okay.
And I do not, I apologize, Mr. Chair, on the tip of my tongue, have the exact square footage of the old Wilson building. But if you give us a moment, we'll find it. So the existing building, I'm told, is about 50,000 square feet.
Okay. Little quick math here. Apologize.
So the ratio we're looking for is about 1 to 300, if that helps you.
It does. I was just going to say, Okay, it looks like they're parked at 4.7 per thousand. I'm not sure how much this number has changed over the years, but I'm perfectly comfortable with 5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. I know we've come down a little over the years with a little more focus on mass transit and bicycles, ride sharing, but just to give an idea of that is a fairly standard ratio for what that's worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anyway, yeah, that was just my kind of musing there. Any other questions or comments for our applicant? Okay, seeing none, well, thank you for now, Ms. Riddell. Let's ask Ms. Diana Kaminsky.
Good evening, Chairman Lyon, Commission. Do we have the presentation, Greg? Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. As Wendy indicated, this is a planned area development with a development plan review that includes 1 existing office building and 2 new 3-story office buildings and the 2 parking structures. The square footage shown here is for the total square footage. And I've provided a diagram here that shows what property is currently owned by the city of Tempe. We have an agreement for sale of those properties, and the portion that is the existing First Street alignment would be dedicated right-of-way on the east side of city-owned Lot F. So I just wanted to point out our relationship to the existing configuration of owners. If we can go to the next slide, please.
Ms. Kaminsky, can I interject for a moment, please?
Sure.
So I now see a conflict that I'd like to be a little more clear. Your previous slide showed a total of 650,000 square feet, and Ms. Riddell just told us it was 350,000 square feet.
This is the square footage of the property, I believe. And then there's a different number that includes the square footage of the garage. And I think you'll see the breakout on the next slide.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So down here under the total building area, we have 420,406, and then the total garage area. So this was an addition, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, that's the Tempe Landing PAD. So this is a comparison of the existing PADs. And then on the far right, you can see the proposed PAD with 370,801 square feet of office building and 228,428 square feet of the garage. I'm not sure where the ratio of 1 to 300 came from, because when I did my analysis, it came out higher than that. And I do have some slides that talk about the parking ratios. And they're not asking for a change to the PAD standard or the parking ratios. It's just that the parking that was requested was significantly higher than what our normal ratio would require. Next slide, please. So the office area is shown here with the parking code that we have of 1 per 300 square feet for a total required of 969 spaces. Wendy did indicate that we do not have a maximum, and that is correct. When I did the analysis, I was just trying to show if this were a surface lot, we do have a maximum surface parking, which is the 1.25 that we use when we're calculating a maximum for surface parking, but we do not have a maximum for structured parking. I was just trying to use that in relationship for comparison. And then this provides a bulleted list of what the percentages of increase over the base minimum code requirements for parking are. Obviously, the office market does demand a higher ratio than what Tempe requires, and we've seen that over the years, and these are all within the area. So it gives you an idea of the percentage of increase that we've seen for similar character of class office in this particular area. And what struck me was that it was significantly higher, and I recognize that it is a vehicle-oriented business, but they were at 70% above what the code required as compared to some of these other projects in the area. Next slide, please. This shows you the overall site plan with the existing building and the 2 parking structures and the 2 new office buildings. Next slide. So these are the reasons that we were looking at the condition number 4 that they have asked to have removed. and I understand and recognize where they're coming from. They did do a lot of work in making modifications to their site to address staff comments. I do want to say I really appreciate the efforts that they put into addressing the architecture. I've never seen an office project that had as much open space, landscaped, usable open space as this project. So they did make extraordinary efforts, and this is the one area that we had some difference. And the reason was really based on our analysis of the site in relationship to other projects of a similar character, in support of our transportation master plan, which includes a effort to reduce single occupancy vehicle commutes and obviously traffic congestion. And then looking at the design of the building and the focal point kind of being this very tall garage and focusing on the automotive part of it, in wanting to screen it with landscaping and possibly reduce the height of it and reduce the setback. Because of the proximity of the garage to Priest and the existing utility corridor, there's not a lot of room for street trees. They actually can't put the street trees adjacent to the sidewalk as we normally would have them. So they left a very narrow area to plant trees outside of that existing utility easement. And so by removing one side of the garage of parking, not only reduced the number of spaces, but it gave us more room for tree growth. So these were the design considerations that we put into the request for a removal of 241 spaces, which would still put them higher than the code parking ratio of 1 to 300 and give them more parking, but obviously not what they were asking for. So that is up to you guys if you want to consider removal of that condition. I just wanted to kind of explain where staff was coming from with that condition. Next slide, please. And this is the landscape plan. We did have several conditions related to landscaping. And again, that had to do with the tree selection in front of the garages and our efforts to provide more landscape screening of those structures rather than a lower desert growing tree that would not get to the size of the garages. But other than that, there is a lot of landscape. They were proposing artificial turf, and they have provided us with real turf. And so to Mr. Amorosi's concern about the trees and the shade, we looked at this very carefully. I had our arborist also look at it, and it's a balancing act between how many trees you put in and how well the grass grows. You know, if it gets too shaded, then we lose the grass viability. And we felt that the real turf provided a much cooler environment to the campus than having a very hot artificial turf environment. So they did place the trees along the south and west sides of the site. And I think that they've done a really good job of trying to balance a shade environment with the need to have the turf be sustainable. So next slide, please. And this just shows the existing office building and the character of that office building with the existing landscape. Next slide. And the proposed elevations for the office buildings, which are very sculptural and use a lot of different materials in a very cohesive way. But as Wendy mentioned, they also provide a lot of rhythm and movement within the building itself. Next slide. Next slide. This shows the relationship of the garage to the buildings. Next slide. And these are the street view elevations. Next slide. And their materials and the renderings, which you've already seen. Next slide. They did have a neighborhood meeting. I did attend that. It was a very good conversation with the representative from the HOA adjacent to this area. And the comment card that I believe Suparna will probably read out loud was from a representative of Riverside Neighborhood Association, and they were in support of staff's conditions related to the landscaping, and their concern being to provide as many new trees as possible to this area. Next slide. So we are recommending approval with conditions, and these unique conditions are outlined here, and the only one that the applicant has concerns with and would like to have removed is number 4. But I believe they're in agreement with the rest of the conditions. Next slide. which were mostly related to the trees. Next slide. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Commissioner, questions for Ms. Kaminsky? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. Ms. Kaminsky, I know staff is aware of the Mayor's Hometown for All program, where we're trying to use city-owned land to build affordable housing, and yet the city wants to sell this parcel that they own to build a giant garage. Why wasn't this considered?
I'm going to have to defer to Ryan on that. I wasn't a part of the discussion on how the property would be used. It did have previous PADs on it that have always had office use. I can tell you that, but I know the initiative you're referring to is new.
Thank you, Diana. Members of the commission, this is Ryan Levesque, Deputy Director in the Planning Division. So what Diana is referring to is this property site was part of a previous development and disposition agreement with Verde and the Liberty property site. So they had first rights of refusals to acquire this property through the city of Tempe, and now they're exercising those rights. So this development agreement gives them authorization to redevelop this site in a manner that goes through the standard city process. Of course, this project will still be required as part of the Hometown for All initiative, that 50% of the building permit fees that are collected for this project, 50% will go to the Hometown for All initiative.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Okay, other questions or comments? I'm going to go back if I could. Ms. Kaminsky, I admit maybe I'm just being a little slow tonight. The way I understood it, Ms. Riddell said there is no maximum allowed parking. And then early in your presentation, I thought I heard you say that is correct, there is no maximum allowed parking. And then in that second to last slide, it says, here's what the maximum parking is. And there was also the discussion of here's how we recommend getting you there. Can you please spell it out for me nice and slow so I know what's going on?
Certainly. So in the zoning code, we have a minimum required parking based on ratios and uses and square footages. We only have a maximum in the code as it applies to surface parking lots. We do not have a maximum in the code related to structured parking. So this condition is unique in that we are imposing a maximum parking for the site. And so they're asking for more parking, significantly more parking than we require by code, but our code doesn't have a maximum for structured parking. So we're putting a maximum on this through the PAD process.
I see. I see. Okay. And that is based in part, it sounds like, by the desire to limit how imposing those parking garages are on Priest. Is that correct?
The design was part of the consideration, as well as looking at our transportation master plan and honoring the direction that we've looked at in terms of reducing single occupancy vehicles. So there was a variety of reasons that led to that condition. I will say, however, if this were a call center, which would be allowed, then they would need those parking spaces. So it's based on what they told us the use was. We did the calculations, and then that drove us to do the analysis in terms of what we felt was the appropriate amount. But I recognize this is a unique situation in that it's the tenant that knows how many parking spaces they feel they need.
Okay. And if you would indulge me, can you actually walk us through the recommendations that you made as far as you showed some numbers that you can remove this many parking spaces if you do this. Can you show us the site plan and talk us through those again so that I can understand what you're recommending they do?
Sure, if Greg wouldn't mind putting that back up, I'd appreciate it. Okay, if you could zoom in, Greg, on the site plan on the, oops. If you could zoom in on the site plan on the southwest end of it. I don't know if you can zoom in. What I did is I counted the number of spaces right along that western edge, that one row, and imagine that multiplied by the number of floors and subtracted that. So you would have basically the drive aisle there would go to those spaces on the east side of that drive aisle, right? Thank you, Greg. And I counted those spaces off for all of the floors in doing that. And then I counted the number of spaces that were on the top floor, the fifth level, and imagined, okay, if this was reduced in height, reduced that floor, how many spaces would be eliminated? And then I also looked at, so that's where I came from. The design side of it was trying to get more space for trees along Priest Drive and trying to minimize the visual impact of the parking structure and have it really tucked back behind the building more so it was less prominent from the street. Those were the design justifications behind the number of spaces. And then that was also tied into looking at the percentages of other projects in the area and how many spaces they asked for in terms of a higher ratio than our code requires.
Okay, I see. Okay.
So it could be a mix and match of any combination of those suggestions.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't have that plan up on the screen. Do you happen to know how much space, what is the dimension as proposed from Priest to the face of the parking garage?
Greg, can you go back to that? I don't know if you can pull that site plan up and zoom in on it. There are dimensions there. There's a very large utility corridor. I don't know. Greg, are you able to zoom in?
I don't think
If
we
I can get down my
Can't.
PDF.
Okay.
It's a PowerPoint, so I can't.
Oh, okay. Hang on
Yeah,
then.
we can zoom in.
Here, I can zoom in on
It's about
PowerPoint,
48 feet.
on the PDF.
Is it 40? Did you say 48 feet?
I see 58 from, well, I'm not sure exactly what that is. It's like partway on the sidewalk, it looks like. But from the center of the street, it's 113.
Right.
Sorry,
We would be looking at
23.
the distance like from the property line to the face of the building, the area that's outside of the right of way for the setback.
Okay, that's the 58 feet then. It's a little unclear here, but that's got to be what the 58's measuring.
And then a large portion of that, I don't have the drawing in front of me. A large portion of that is the utility corridor.
Right. I see a 43.3 BUE.
Yes, that's it.
And okay, so the trees have to live in that 15 foot.
Yes.
I see. Okay, so I understand that concern better now. And it doesn't look like there's room to shift that parking garage to the east in any convenient way either. Okay, all right, I think I understand why you had those suggestions that you did. Okay. All right, thank you for indulging me.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Ms. Kaminsky? Commissioner Lloyd.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I just want to clarify the parking one more time to compare what the applicant is requesting versus what you are suggesting based upon a total building square footage, including the existing building of 290,430 square feet, correct? And then based upon what the applicant is requesting, about 1,652 spaces, that's a ratio of about 5.6 per thousand, versus your recommendation is about 4.8 per thousand. Is that right? I'm just trying to understand.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Johnson, please.
Thank you. So I'm also trying to understand this on the priest side of that parking garage, the landscape plan, then if the conditions of approval hold, would change, or is the landscape drawing L3.0 shown as it would be? So if we're pulling back that 15 feet, does it change the landscape plan as shown on these drawings?
So what's shown on the drawings would not change unless the garage configuration changed. Obviously, then there would be more space for those trees. What the conditions of approval were related to the species of trees. So the species of trees would be different, but they would still be in the same location as shown on that plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Bauer, please.
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to really clarify this parking situation because the numbers I'm coming up with are different than what Commissioner Lloyd just indicated. At 370,801 square feet of office, including the two new office buildings and the existing office building, at 4 per thousand, staff's recommendation is less than 4 per thousand of that number. And from my standpoint, look, the one space per 300 square feet, that's a zoning code issue. That has nothing to do with the appropriate amount of parking for a use. And 4 per thousand is not adequate for a complex of this magnitude. 5 per thousand, I think, is the baseline, and what the applicant is asking for, based on my calculations, is less than 5 per thousand. Their 5 per thousand would be at approximately, it'd be almost 1,800 spaces. So I think we need to clarify this because number one, 1 to 300 is just not anything I'm even going to use as a baseline. That doesn't work for retail. It doesn't work for office. It may work for industrial, depending upon what kind of industrial use you have. 4 per thousand, I don't think is good for an office complex of this. I understand the design considerations. However, driving around downtown, these parking garages are articulated to a significant degree, just as well as Hayden Ferry Lakeside, which is right on Rio Salado Parkway, and just as well and better than the State Farm office building, which is right on Rio Salado Parkway. So at this stage, I do want clarification on this parking because I want to make sure that my numbers are not in error. It's a very confusing situation, and I want to make sure everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. Thank you.
Okay. You know, I appreciate that. And since you're bringing it up, I'm going to nitpick a little more. Looking at drawing DR09, I see existing building 1 listed at 49,000 gross square feet, proposed 2 at 109,000, and proposed 3 at 132, which does not add up to 350,000. So I do think maybe we need to dial in exactly what numbers we are actually talking about. So let's do this. Let's ask Ms. Riddell if she will jump into the conversation and help us sort out what exactly is the square footage that we're talking about, first of all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to make a joke that while I went to law school, it was entirely to avoid math. So please disregard. Anytime you hear me doing math equations on the fly, everybody should stop me right there. Here's the bottom line. For Carvana, we need 1,652 spaces. They've been very clear with us. They've been very actively involved throughout this process. I want to be very clear with Ms. Kaminsky that this is not a call center. We're happy to stipulate to that, as we have said over and over and over again. In terms of the square footage of the building, the one building, the existing building I have at 49,000 square feet. The other two are approximately 125,000 square feet each. So that's again, I'm going to avoid math, but 125 plus 125 plus 49, someone smarter than me is going to be able to figure that out. And then the total number of spaces we need is 1,652 spaces.
All right, well, the numbers you listed come up to 299,000 square feet. And if you had 1,652 parking spaces for 299,000 square feet, that would be 5.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. That's what my team has reported to me as well.
Okay. And let's see. If we were to use Ms. Kaminsky's 1,411 at 299,000 square feet, that would be 4.7 spaces per 1,000. Okay. Well, so we have a little bit of competing desires here. It is clear to me that Carvana is passionate about 652 spaces because I know they wouldn't pay for anything more than what they think they really need. Is I know that they're terribly expensive. I can't even think of what they cost right now. Notwithstanding, I will say I am inclined to support Ms. Kaminsky in a desire to make sure that that language speaks correctly and that we do get proper planting along the street there. So I think we're going to have a little more discussion about this. Let's move along then. Commission, other questions for Ms. Kaminsky? All right, seeing none, we will thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. Unless, okay, no, I see you want to chip in. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, when I brought up the call center, it was only to recognize that if this were a call center, they would be allowed and be required by code to have more parking. So they're not a call center, but if they were, then these parking ratios would be a part of their requirement. And it is hard for us to calculate when we talk about 1 per 1,000 because our code isn't written per 1,000, it's written per 100. But I appreciate your analysis of it.
Okay. Okay, well, we're getting there. We're slogging through it together. Okay, thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. So let's go now to Ms. Dasgupta. I believe we have one comment to be read into the record. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman. There is one comment, and it's from Merrill Darcy. He's a Tempe resident, as we know, and he is in support of the project, and here's his comment. Riverside neighborhood residents welcome Carvana and approval of the project with the staff stipulation regarding the tree pallet and placements. This is important because we need as many trees that can be supported in this area, especially since the existing parking lot is devoid of any trees. A park or courtyard setting would be a valuable addition to the employees and neighbors alike, as well as the continuation of the wide sidewalk. Please support the conditions as recommended by the Planning Department. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dasgupta. All right, so that closes our public comment section. Let's come back to Ms. Riddell now. We've kind of kicked a couple things around, and you've heard from staff. Now's your formal opportunity to respond to the things you've heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the discussion about shifting the garage, I think it was mentioned, but I want to make sure it's unequivocally clear. There is a substantial power line easement along there that really makes any shifting impossible to accomplish. We have worked very hard with staff to make sure that there are significant planting areas. We are in agreement with their changes to the stipulation regarding the materials that will be planted. Again, I go back to the fact that we've got a $50 billion publicly traded company called Carvana that wants to put their headquarters here. It is, they need the ability to park cars for their headquarters. And I think staff's attested to the fact that we have done a very good job of working with them. I think the design is, I got compliments from Mr. Amorosi. That doesn't happen all the time. That this is a really well-designed project. It is a great use for a tremendously underutilized, vacant, challenging site. And it really sets the stage for what is possible ultimately with the Priest Yard across the street, making this an incredible gateway for Tempe. So with that, I'm hoping that you recognize the value of having a company like Carvana's headquarters here in Tempe and give them what they need to be successful. So with that, I respectfully request your approval, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
All right. Commission, additional questions for Ms. Riddell? Vice Chair DiDomenico.
Wendy, can you tell us what the expected headcount, employee headcount will be in all three buildings once completed?
Yes, Mr. Chair. When I asked Carvana about that, they actually think they're going to have close to 1,700 employees expected overall on the campus. It could be higher. I mean, they tell you it's going to be somewhere around that. It could be higher, it could be lower. They do have shifts. I mean, not true shifts, but they do have the ability to have flexible schedules for people that come in and out. So again, that's why they're very adamant that this is the amount of parking that they need.
And it's a C-suite expectation for use, but I imagine there's some level of public interface. You do have vendors, maybe not customers per se, but outside visitors also come into this office?
Certainly, Commissioner DiDomenico, that would be the case. And even though this is where they anticipate putting their C-suite folks, they will tell you as an organization, they are a relatively flat organization. So you will have C-suite, but you'll have a variety of employees that will be housed in this campus.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments or questions for Ms. Riddell? Okay, seeing none, we will thank you, Ms. Riddell. Let's move on to our commission discussion. Commissioner Bauer.
Mr. Chairman, I understand the math now. I do not understand the table in the staff report. Where the table that says office 290, 430 square feet apparently is the amount of square footage that is used for calculating parking. What is the 370,801 square feet, which is in that table area immediately above that says total building area under the proposed PAD? Therein lies the confusion that I had.
Well, we can go back to staff and clarify. I think let's do that. I think I know the answer, but let's ask Ms. Kaminsky again. Are you with us? Diana?
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't realize I was muted. I went through this with Suparna and Ryan before we loaded the report, and now I apologize. There were numbers, and I took the numbers off of their drawings, and I'm trying to think now why those numbers were different, if it had to do with the gross and net. I'll have to pull up the drawings and take a look at those again.
Mr. Chairman, it's not important at this stage. The applicant has confirmed, I believe she has confirmed that it's 290, 430, which is fine for calculating parking.
Okay. Well, I'm coming to kind of the same conclusion myself, that it does appear that the total number is just under 300,000. We've heard some conflicting reports to the contrary, but I think we're reasonably settled at the 300,000. All right. So, Commission, how do you feel about the project?
Mr. Chairman, if I could continue, this is truly a win for the city. Having a corporation of this magnitude want to locate in the city on a piece of property that might otherwise not attract a corporation of this magnitude and provide a great benefit to the overall city. It is a situation where it's a beautiful campus, really a good layout, well architectured. I think these parking garages, they are parking garages. And, you know, it's one thing I've always said on developments that I've done across the country is that so many times we try and make parking garages look like something other than a parking garage. And you really can't do that unless it's underground. These are very well articulated. With regard to trying to salvage some space along Priest in order to get additional landscaping, changing the footprint of a parking garage is never a good idea. In a project that we're under construction in Indiana, we had a very tight site, and the adjacent neighbor who was donating some land to a property wanted us to build him a parking garage. It was a 25,000 square foot footprint for a parking garage that was going to be 5 stories. To say it was inefficient is an understatement. We could not make it pencil in any way, shape, or form. And as a result, we did not build that parking garage. When footprints are laid out for parking garages to be as efficient as possible, because at anywhere from $25,000 to $45,000 per space, you have to be efficient. As it goes to the number of parking spaces, if Carvana is planning at any time to have 1,700 employees, they need more parking than 1,500 parking spaces. So I'm in agreement with the applicant. I fully support mass transit. I want people to get out of their cars, but unfortunately Tempe is not yet at a place where a city like Chicago is, where you have multiple modes of transportation in all areas of the city to get wherever you want to go. Here, I live in South Tempe. I remember asking staff a number of years ago, are we ever going to have light rail or a streetcar in South Tempe? And they looked at me and they said, never. It's never going to happen. Well, so that means I get in my car and I go wherever I need to. When I do go to an ASU football or basketball game, I do park in the park and ride the light rail in. But it doesn't mean I don't have to take my car to get to that park and ride spot. So, Mr. Chairman, I fully support this case. I think the applicant and the design team have done a really, really good job. I understand what the goals are of attempting to encourage mass transit use. However, I would not take a chance with a corporate partner like Carvana bringing that many jobs to Tempe to have them underparked on this site. So I'll support the case with removal of stipulation number 4. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Other comments? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I'm going to go with supporting Tempe's master transportation plan and supporting staff. And I'd like to keep condition number 4, because if we don't start somewhere with new development, when do we start? We just keep kicking the can down the road, and people still complain to us about all the congestion downtown. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lloyd.
So I feel torn because I agree with Commissioner Bauer in terms of this is a challenging site, and this is a really exciting opportunity for the city of Tempe to land a major corporate headquarters. At the same time, I do feel like 5.5 per thousand is on the heavier side, especially when the city's recommending something lighter than that. So I don't know if there's any room for compromise to bring that down by a couple hundred spaces to get it closer to just 5 per thousand, or if there's a way that Carvana can work with the city towards some sort of arrangement to contribute to long-term sustainability projects in the downtown, in the North Tempe area that might have some overarching impacts long-term in other projects that are happening through city initiatives. So I'm just throwing that out there as a thought for ongoing conversations with the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Light. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this site would be, this development would be fantastic for this corner. I think the architecture is really great. Site layout is very much an improvement over what is currently there with the layout of First Street. I also really appreciate the city's efforts to maximize the trees in this area. I do live in Riverside, and I walk near this area fairly often, and there aren't that many trees. But I was struggling with it and looking at that parking garage, and I think Commissioner Bauer really hit the nail, the hammer on the nail for me with that one, because removing one row of parking really, I think will really increase the cost per parking space for that parking garage, because you're literally losing half of a row. And I don't see how it could be reconfigured so that you're just shaving off one row of parking and you're still able to be efficient in parking that garage. So I would support either. I would love to have more trees, but I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to make that parking garage so inefficient. So, thank you.
Commissioner Casano, please.
Transit and options that are needed and all this kind of stuff. One thing that you have to think about is density is going to drive the availability of other forms of transit to an area. And this is an area where people forget about it, but I think adding the density that you're talking about here is not going to detract by the parking garage, not going to detract from transit options. It's actually going to probably enhance the ability to justify enhancing transit in this area. So it's maybe a catch-22 in some ways. You need the density to attract the transit, but just by saying I need more transit is like saying I need a grocery store in an area. It's got to work for the area. Otherwise, you're just going to be renting. It's going to be a cost, and that's not going to benefit anybody. So I don't have the issue with the transit requirement that we see here. And I do like the project very much, because as many times as I've driven by that site and having seen all of the power lines that used to be there, understanding the easements that are required in the property, it's not the easiest thing to develop. And I really like what Carvana is proposing. It is still one of the few gateways we have that where you would see this not only from the street but from the air. It's an attractive development, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, I'll chime in just a little bit, and I will say that I feel a little torn. I want to support city staff. I know that they make the recommendations they do for good reasons, and I view part of my role as to support their recommendations. They don't make those recommendations lightly. However, I know that some of those modifications of the parking garage we talked about they're just not very feasible. As was stated, removing one side of the parking doesn't really work out. And maybe you can talk about taking the top level off, and that's possible. And then we come back to the notion that there's no way in heck Carvana would say we need 652 parking spaces if 651 would work for them. They're not going to pay for a single parking space that they don't think they need. Having said that, we are talking about a planned area development, and part of our job as a commission, as I see it, is we need to come to the table and talk about what works well for the city in the long run. And if we don't see a reason to have that much parking on a space, on a site, or that large of a parking structure, or there's not sufficient planting or whatnot, that's a discussion we need to have. So I tell you, I feel a little torn about it. I think I will be supporting the project without condition 4. All right. Any other comments, or shall we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve PAD 210006 and DPR 210033, subject to the stipulations contained in the staff report with the deletion of stipulation number 4.
Okay. Motion from Commissioner Bauer. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Casano. I will second the motion by Mr. Bauer.
Okay. Excuse me. Motion to approve minus condition 4 from Commissioner Bauer, seconded by Commissioner Casano. Commissioner Bauer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano.
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Lloyd.
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Nay.
And Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-1 with Commissioner Amorosi in dissent. So that takes care of our regular agenda, folks. Thank you, Ms. Riddell, and thank you, Butler Design Group, for another good project. We're looking forward to seeing Carvana here. I think we're all hoping for the very best results there. I'd also like to take a couple of minutes here. As was noted in our study session, this will be the final DRC in an official capacity for both myself and Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Johnson, do you have any comments that you wish to say on that?
I didn't prepare any remarks, but I just want to say that I've really enjoyed my time here. The last 6 years, it is, I don't know that it's flown by, but it's been very interesting to be involved in the commission and get to see all of the projects come through the city, which was my goal to get on the commission, because I wanted to see these and have input on these projects before they got built. And I'm pretty proud of what Tempe has done over the last 6 years. And I'm going to miss the commission, but I'm also going to relish every other Thursday evening. So, and I really appreciate work and getting to know all of you, all the city staff, all the rest of the commissioners. So I hope everybody keeps in touch, and going to miss everybody.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson. I'm going to take a couple minutes, personal privilege here as well. So I've been involved with DRC for several years now as well, and I just want to say that it's been a fantastic privilege and an amazing education to see architecture, to see urban planning, to see development from this side of the table and understand what goes into it and understand, well, I guess just another point of view, another player at the table, and why these things go the way they do, and have more empathy and more ability to see a project and see what it takes to make it successful. It's been a huge privilege, and I thank you all for the opportunity. It's been great getting to know you all, and I'm just very thankful for the service opportunity. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've concluded our official business. We'll ask Ms. Dasgupta if she has any updates on future meetings for us.
Chairman and commission members, the next meeting of the commission is going to be on July 27th. We will be sending out an agenda soon. And I we just want to extend the same appreciation that you all have extended towards staff in the last 6 years, and working with staff and working with applicants, and how supportive have been as a commission member, as a chairperson, Commissioner Johnson as a commission member. I do certainly would like to stay in touch with all of you, because it's a great relationship that has been built between staff and commission. We would like to see you in the future in other commissions, other different types of commissions. So thank you so much for your volunteer service.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dasgupta. And yeah, just one more moment. I'm going to say thank you to everyone on staff. You guys are great, and I really love working with you, and it's been great getting to know you. Thanks to everyone of the commissioners. You guys certainly kept it interesting. We've had some good-spirited debates, and it's been great to have different point of views and get to know you all. I'm happy to see a couple of ladies becoming full commission members. There have been too many of us guys for a little while. So great to see Commissioner Schwartz and Commissioner Lloyd coming on full-time. That's fantastic. And looking forward to see what you guys do in the future. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Dave.